Welcome to the third Spotlight Saturday Spotlight. Which way is it? I haven't decided yet. Maybe I don't know for sure. Anyway, welcome to the third week. At least we have a name now, right? This tonight's Spotlight Saturday is going to be different from the last two. And really, what this goes to show you is that with this strong foundation of a Spotlight event, a proven strategy underlying all of your decisions, this is really customizable from here on out. You can do pre recorded, like we're doing today. You can do fully live. You can do solo. You can do guest, although I do recommend guest. Guesting comes as a very strong part of this strategy at its foundation. But if you don't know what I mean by spotlight events, just hang tight because once you stay till the end, you will understand this in detail. We're going to get deep into it with Jenn today. But first, our guest, Jenn Zellers. She is the founder of Virtual Summit Search, a speaker directory. In fact, I'm going to drop the link in the chat because if you are not listed up here and you are a speaker who wants to speak more at virtual summits and more, we'll get to that in a second, you have to list yourself up here, okay? So this is Jenn Zeller. She founded this, and she's also the founder of the visibility ecosystem, which you're also going to hear more about. That is coming soon. So I'll let you learn more about that from Jenn herself. This next section is going to be pre-recorded, but know that I am still live here in the chat, so you can say hello when you log in, and as well as interact and ask questions in the chat as we go along. And then I will be right back here live at the end for questions and to dig into some of this strategy as well, and talking more about the spotlight type events and how you can apply what Jenn's going to show you here to a very easy, repeatable kind of event. We're going to talk about that at the end. All right, so without further ado, let me get this started.
Jen, and welcome. Apologies for my voice. Woke up this morning with allergies or cold or something, but we are doing this. And I'm really excited to dive straight into the conversation. People who are tuning in may know you from our podcast, may know you from your own platform. So I'm just going to dive in and assume people know you and they can check you out online elsewhere, learn more about you once they know how awesome you are after this conversation. So thank you for being here. Yeah. You are all about the visibility ecosystem, right?
Yep.
I also think of you when I think of speakers and speaker opportunities because you founded the Virtual Summit Search directory, which is a directory of speakers and hosts to get connected when, for virtual summits and multi-speaker events. And I mean, even podcasts and stuff, I'm sure. Have you heard of some other use cases besides just straight virtual summits where people have gotten connected in your directory?
Oh yeah, we've had bundles come through. We've had the podcasts, obviously the virtual summits. I've had people get invited for guest expert spots in like group programs and Facebook groups and stuff like that. So there's so many different options for ways that you can get found as a speaker.
So why is it so powerful to get connected as a speaker, to speak on other people's stages, to host a summit yourself? Why is this such a need and such a desire? Why are so many people interested in this?
Well, for one, you get to share people's audiences. And so you're not only sharing their audience with you, but you're sharing your audience with them as well. So I always, if I have enough advance notice, I always try to make sure that I shout it out at least once, because if it's something that I think is valuable enough for me to speak on, it should be something valuable enough for my audience to attend, and I should be providing enough value for the host's audience that they want to come and hang out with me more too. So being able to share those audiences instead of sharing Facebook's audience and having to pay them in order to get in front of new people, you can do it for free or even get paid. And honestly, those people are going to be much higher quality leads and subscribers than somebody who's coming cold off of Facebook or Instagram or even Google or YouTube, because they've gotten to have that personal connection with you. They've heard you speak. They've gotten to probably see your face and see you smile. And you can just get connected in a totally different way than you can with ads or social media or anything like that.
Speaking of quality leads, I really want to dig into that one, because I mean, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently as I've been transitioning off of being so active on social media, because yeah, I've got thousands of people that I connect with on social, but how many of those are actually quality leads for me? And so I've been looking at, okay, where are the actual quality leads? So how do you find them? How do you attract them? How do you get them to listen to you?
Yeah, so I always make sure that we are getting in front of people who are aligned. So I work with online service providers, digital product creators, coaches, and authors primarily. So I'm not going to want to go and get in front of an audience of Etsy sellers. That's not who we work with. There are other people who do, and they're great for that, but that's not who I typically work with just because of how our framework interacts with physical products. So if I went and spoke on that kind of platform, it's not going to get those quality leads. I'm going to get people who are going to quickly realize, oh, this probably isn't for me, and they're going to leave my email list, which is good, but I'd rather spend my time getting in front of my actual audience. So that's always the first thing, is making sure that there is an actual audience match, and then just making sure that the topic that you're going to be talking about is relevant and doesn't overlap too much with the host, because sometimes you end up going in and talking about something and they start saying, oh yeah, well, I offer this, and you're like, oh, that was where I was going with it too, shoot. So making sure that you've got the audience match, the topic match, and just that you're providing value. The more value that you are able to provide and help them see you as an expert, the more likely they are to become a lead and become a quality lead, because they see exactly what you do, who you are, and how you can help them.
They know that it's a good fit. They have that confidence going in, instead of you having to jump on a sales call and convince them or anything like that. They already know you and what you provide and how it is a good fit. And good fit is one of these themes that I'm seeing, because, good fit for speaker and host and vice versa. And so how do you ensure that it's a win-win, that you're not competing, like you said? Can you give me some specific examples of really great collaboration fits where the audience served by the two people was the same, but the problem that the two people solved was different, and so the collaboration worked really well?
Yeah, so for me, that's typically folks like copywriters or ad strategists, because I do have clients sometimes who want to do ads, but that's not what we focus on. We do the organic visibility ecosystem, and then you can add ads onto that if you want. We don't do the copywriting. So anything that fills a need that my audience may have that I'm not going to be filling. So even a brand strategist, if someone comes to me without their brand in place, it's going to be really hard to make a cohesive visibility ecosystem until they have that set up. So if someone comes to me, I'd say, actually, why don't you go talk to Lisa or somebody else who does branding? And so that way I'm able to send people over there. They then send them back to me. But it's also a great collaboration opportunity, because I could hop on a collaboration with Lisa, like over at Vivid Visual Solutions, and who's one of our mutual friends. So we'd be able to go and do something together and show people, okay, so this is why branding is so important in order to create your visibility ecosystem, and your visibility ecosystem then gets your brand out there. So we are able to do some really good collaborations with something like that, for example.
That is such a good example, and making it so tangible of, this is exactly who, this is exactly the kind of conversation that we can have. And I love focusing on that as well. With our Spotlight machine, we bring two people onto a stage to share it. And so, like you mentioned, you can have that overlap of those Venn diagrams. This is what you do, this is what they do, this is that overlap of what you can talk about, and that can become your topic. So this is one way that you can approach sharing a stage. You don't have to feel like you're the host or the guest, or that your guest is the host or the guest. You could just have a conversation about that thing that you both love, and you happen to record it or stream it live. Either way, you can record it if you're not confident that it's going to be awesome, but if you're awesome and the collaborator is awesome and the topic is something you're passionate about, it's going to be good.
Yeah. And sometimes those lead to more than just that recording. So, like, I've got a collaboration coming up with Jatia Jones where we're talking about how to be a multi-passionate speaker and use speaking seasons and that type of thing in your business, how to find your speaking topic. And so we're going to do a workshop. And this is after we did a podcast episode, and then we can turn it into a course if it goes well. So you can take that spotlight hour and it can expand into so many different things.
Yes. Oh, I love all of the ideas. I know that you and I have put you on 3 types of my stages just in the past few months. So yes, you can get that flywheel started. That's another thing that I talk about a lot, is getting that flywheel started. Once you are on stage once, and that stage can be in person, it can be virtual, it can be a podcast, it can be one of these spotlight events, a big summit. But once you get on one, then people see you and expect you on another, whether that's a host looking for speakers who then invites you to come speak without having to apply at all, which are the best. Like, honestly, let me just dive into a specific example again. Looking at my summit speaking opportunities, the different times I've spoken on summits, the ones where I was sought out and asked to speak have always had better results than the ones that I go and apply for. I've had some really good application process. There's been a couple that are kind of in that middle, where I applied and had a good experience. But honestly, I knew those hosts before I applied. So just because they didn't think of me first, once I applied, it was like, okay, yeah, we can make this work really well. So knowing the people that you are collaborating with, having an actual relationship with them is so much more powerful than just going through a podcast group and applying for everything that you could possibly be applicable for. Yeah, I haven't seen a whole lot of audience growth from doing that. However, that doesn't mean there's no benefit, because I have seen a lot of growth in myself as a speaker, as a recorder, as a conversationalist. And so don't be afraid to take on small stages or stages that you're not sure whether they're a perfect fit or not. If your gut's saying, go for it, there's something there for you and for the host and for the audience, go for it. So soapbox, climbing down off of that soapbox. Jen, do you have a soapbox you want to hop onto?
I mean, I have many that I could go into, but yeah, having that starting point. That's why I always start my visibility ecosystem clients off with a podcast tour, because that's proactive. You can reach out to people, that builds your network, and those people can, like we've been talking about, then turn into something more. So a lot of the time people are like, all right, I'm a speaker. Where are the speaking invites? And it doesn't typically work like that. So there's some steps that you have to take, and starting, like you said, that flywheel is so important for just getting everything going and starting to get those invites rolling in, because that is the ultimate goal of your visibility ecosystem, of your other collaborations, is getting invites coming in organically without having to pitch yourself. But you have to get that started. People have to know that you're interested in that what you speak about, and that you do deliver value on a consistent basis first.
Tell me more about this, the benefits, specifically the benefits of a podcast tour versus, I guess, pros and cons of the podcast tour and a bunch of summits, being on summits.
So we typically try to do those hand in hand, but because summits are such a different beast in terms of how people find speakers. Like I said, podcast tours are proactive. You're reaching out to the host typically, whether they have an application form that you're filling out or you're sending them a pitch email. So you are the instigator of that connection. And you might be connecting, like I always recommend, connect with them on social media or through email, just like reply back to their email newsletter or something first. But in the end, it's typically you reaching out, unless you've established such a good relationship that they reach out before you manage to get to it. But with summits, it's not as proactive. Typically, the host is the one reaching out to speakers. They might put out a speaker call. It's becoming a little bit more common. But because hosts often see hit or miss with the quality of the speakers they're getting there, they tend to be going to the people they know, getting referrals from the people they know, and then going out and doing research themselves. So if you're not getting visible on podcasts first, or some other way, whether it's doing lives on social media or doing these kind of spotlight hours where you're getting in front of new audiences, it's a lot harder to get found. So I tend to just try to do them hand in hand, but you're going to get a slightly different audience too, because podcasts are a bit more passive in terms of the connection. You'll probably get some leads coming in, but they're not going to be as much of an influx, and they may or may not be as qualified because they're going to typically be getting a freebie. Whereas with the summit, they're in it, they're live for 3 to 5 days or however long it ends up being. Even if it's a 1-day summit, they're probably there live. And so in that case, they're engaged. If they've bought the all access pass, they've put money into it. And then if they're redeeming your contribution to the all access pass, then they are qualified and they're clearly interested. So you know that you can follow up with them. So there's pros and cons to both, but it's easier to get found for summits if you're doing podcasts, and they'll feed into each other as you build on it.
Okay, let's continue to dig in a little bit. Expand this to hosting your own podcast, hosting your own summit, pros and cons.
Yes. So first off, I always recommend folks guest on that type of platform at least 3 to 5 times before starting their own. You are going to get such a more clear vision of what you do want to do and what you don't want to do. Because a lot of the time folks will go and they'll start a podcast, they'll host a summit when they've only listened to podcasts or they've only attended summits. They haven't seen the back end of how it's being run, how the speakers are being treated, and just how much work goes into it. Because if you have a good summit host, hopefully they're updating you regularly on like, all right, so here's what we're working on. Here's the swipe copy. Here's the graphics. Here's all the other things that you need in order to promote it. So until you've seen all of that, until you've seen at least some of what goes into a podcast, you're not going to see probably as much because you'll record, they'll do all the editing, which hopefully they're editing. And then maybe you get some promo graphics and stuff like that. But you can at least get an idea of like, okay, so this is the information I was provided as a podcast guest. This is the information I really should have been provided as a podcast guest. So for both podcasts and summits, you can get a feel for what you want to do, what's missing, and how you want to make that experience for your speakers. In terms of hosting, again, a lot of the time they can go hand in hand. You could host a summit first, and then maybe you end up inviting all of those speakers to come onto your podcast. Or you say, hey, are you all right if I turn this into the start of a podcast and use clips from your interview or something like that? Or maybe you start a podcast first and then you go, okay, these people are amazing. I really want to dive deeper into it than we can get. Or maybe there's something that would be a bit more visual. And so you decide to host a summit after that. So it depends typically on your comfort level. Summits are going to be a lot more tech involved than a podcast, but you do also have to do typically more editing with a podcast, and it's something you want to be consistently doing rather than do 3 to 6 months of work and then you're done unless you go evergreen. So it just depends on your capacity and what your goal is, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another benefit that I think of when I think of hosting and that I've experienced in hosting is that it's my stage. So selling from the stage becomes more natural when it's my stage and I don't feel like I'm stepping on any people's toes. So do you agree there? Do you have any other thoughts about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Back when I co-hosted a summit in September of 2020 with Krista Miller over at Summit in a Box, that was exactly what we did, is we positioned the entire summit to be able to sell her signature product. And we did a giveaway, and it made it so much easier to talk about her product because we were doing the giveaway. It was something that people wanted, so they wanted to hear more about it. And she was able to have her best launch to date at that point through hosting this summit. And there was a lot of people who were already in her audience that this ended up being the conversion event for them. They'd been there for a while, and this was the thing that they got to hear about it so much. They got to see it in action. And so that converted them. And even if that's not exactly how you're setting up your summit, it still gives you so many opportunities to talk about it organically. You can even bring on your clients or your students. And even if they're not strictly talking about your offer, it comes up a lot. Like, we didn't ask people to talk about it, and it came up all the time. So it just gives you so many more organic opportunities to talk about it and for other people to talk about it too.
I love that so much. So how did you keep it as a win-win with co-hosting this? You talked about Krista and the benefits that it had for her, but you as co-host, what kind of benefits did you see?
I had an increased affiliate commission and we split the profits from the actual summit itself. So yeah, there were still definitely benefits on both sides.
I love that so much. And that's some of the strategy that goes into the Spotlight Machine methodology and strategy, is that idea of co-hosting. And we've talked about in previous episodes here about how you can make it that win-win. And that's one of the things that has come up a little bit, but hearing it in actual execution from you is so helpful to me, but also I think to our listeners, because it shows exactly that model of if someone has something that's more mid to high ticket that they can promote, whether it's you as the host or the collaborator, whichever collaborator it is, if you decide to double down and focus on one of your offers, make it that win-win, increase the affiliate commission, do something that makes both of you really excited to share this thing and invite people into it. Can you talk more about selling from the stage?
Yeah, so that is something that we definitely have a strong focus on with Visibility Ecosystem, because we always use a customized leads-free sales strategy for our clients. And so rather than doing a hard pitch, which there are times that you can and should do that, a lot of the time, if you're speaking on a summit or you're speaking on a podcast, you may not be able to do that. Podcasts, it hit or miss. Summits, almost all the time, it's going to be a no. They would rather not have people pitching. Understandably, I don't let my speakers pitch either, because it dilutes things and makes it a webinar and not a summit. So when you're not able to pitch, you can still sell. You don't have to make that pitch in order to make sales. I have had calls with folks after summits where they sell themselves because of how I've talked about things during my presentation and how I've helped them on the call and talked about things on the call. So you can definitely do sales without pitching, but if you are able to pitch and you're able to do it from a place of providing value rather than give me money, then you're going to have a much better conversion rate and people are going to feel more comfortable working with you because they see that you're in it for them, not just for yourself.
You mentioned how podcasts are kind of a sometimes maybe you can pitch, summits usually not. You're pitching a freebie if anything. And with the Spotlight Machine, it's always up to the host. No matter what stage you are appearing on, it's always up to the host what level of pitching, what level of selling is involved. And so it brings us back to that win-win. How can you find that win-win always? That needs to be your focus all along the way, is making sure that expectations are set on both sides so that there's no surprises, because there's no best way, right? Like, I'm sure maybe you even have some specific examples, any stories you want to share, I'm totally welcome it. I'm thinking about times when you may have pitched a freebie or only been able to share free value and, follow me on these platforms, get connected with me, this is how you can get connected. And that results in a sale. Like you kind of mentioned that, versus pitching from a stage and crickets and nobody there. So it doesn't have to do so much with the actual pitch itself. It's that audience fit. It's how you talk about your offer and position it as something that people want to be with you. And I use that word offer because it's not necessarily your the thing you are selling. Jen, you offer a visibility ecosystem. I'm sure that that's not just a single product with a single price point that you're just putting out there. That is your offer. When you work with Jen, she's coming from a strategic place of building your visibility. And that's what I know, even if I didn't know Jen better, just from a single conversation, even if she never mentioned a specific thing that she was selling, I know that if I want visibility and I want it in a holistic way, well, Jen's my gal.
Yeah, and that's That's part of the power of combining visibility with a sleaze-free sales strategy is you're able to talk about that in a way that makes you the go-to person. And there may be other people who are offering what you offer, but the way that you're offering it is unique, and it helps people know if they want to go to you or go to somebody else.
Oh yeah, that gets my mind thinking of all these different people, because there have been times when I have seen an offer, like a product or a service or something like that. And I'm like, oh, that's great. But once I watch a video of that person or listen to them, I'm like, I cannot stand their voice. I don't think I can work with this person long term on a one-on-one relationship or something like that. And vice versa. And I can, like, anyone who is in that category for me should not take offense, because it's odd things. It doesn't mean you have a bad voice. But, or it can be just an energy thing, where I know that at one point I was looking for a particular coach, and I needed someone that I knew was going to push me, not just in like the actual way of pushing me, but I was looking for someone who had the kind of energy behind them, the kind of mood that they would approach things with, that was that push, push, push. And sometimes that is too much for me. And sometimes I want that person who sits next to me and works through, like I had a money coach for a good 6 months or something like that. And we had to work through a lot. And she would push me, but it was in this beautiful, gentle, but intense, like you could not move her like a rock. If I pushed back, she just waited for me to come around, and I needed that during that season. And so that's what's so powerful about the visibility ecosystem, and being able to get on stages and put yourself on stage and host stages yourself, so you can get yourself out there and people connect with you. We are so craving connection right now. As of this recording, we're coming out of lockdowns and craving in-person experiences, craving face-to-face, craving hearing people's voices instead of just reading off of our screens. And so this is a prime moment to be getting on those stages, getting visibility virtually and then in person. Because, oh my goodness, I'm going to cut off the conversation right about here, more or less, but we haven't even touched on how building these relationships virtually, seeing each other. I mean, we can get just real specific here, seeing each other on video, on summits, on podcasts, hearing each other's voices meant that when I hosted my in-person event, Jenn was on top of my list to invite to come be in person and speak from my stage. She actually spoke on multiple panels, so I invited her up on stage like every day of the event. And it was because we have built this relationship. I knew what I could expect from Jenn. I knew that she was going to be a good collaborator. And so before we both made those big investments of traveling to be in the same place at the same time and all of that, we knew each other. And so using virtual stages to get onto in-person stages, that's what all of this is about. Whether it's the spotlight strategy, integrating that with Jenn's visibility ecosystem, it's that ecosystem. I love that word, ecosystem, that you use. So, Jenn, is there anything you would like to add before we end this particular conversation and say until next time?
I just want to make sure that y'all recognize that, honestly, you could build your entire business off of speaking and collaborations. I know a surprising number of people who either never bothered getting on social media, at least not, like, they may have accounts, but they don't post regularly. So they never bothered starting, or they got burned out on it and they quit, and their business still continued to grow because they had those relationships that built things. They got in front of other people's audiences. They went on podcast tours. They appeared on virtual summits. They hosted events like this, and they just kept building those relationships with their collaborators, which built their relationships with their audience, because that collaborator says, I trust Jenn. I trust Jordan. And so their audience immediately goes, oh, well, if they trust them, I can probably trust them too. And so you bypass about half of this, the customer journey, just by getting in front of the audience with someone that they trust. So it skips pretty much all the steps that you might go through on social media, and you can supplement it with email marketing and stuff. But then social media becomes icing on the cake, not something you have to do every single day. Because if you're doing something like this every week, if you are hosting a summit once a month, if you're going, or once a month, once a year, if you're hosting a summit once a year, you're going on a podcast tour every quarter and appearing on 5 to 10 podcasts each quarter, you may not have to market your business in any other way. So the power of speaking and collaborations is just so key to building your business.
Let's try that again. You heard it from Jenn herself. You can build your entire business from speaking on stages. I want to let that settle in. I want to let that sink in. If you, like me, are becoming more and more less and less interested in spending time and energy on platforms like Facebook, Meta, Instagram, if you're becoming disillusioned, you are not alone. And there are other ways. And speaking is one of those really, really strong ways, as well as hosting your own stages. Like we talked about, there's this mixture of it, right? And so that's what I want to talk about a little bit more to dig into some of the stuff that Jenn has said. So feel free to interact in the chat. I am truly live. We just watched a pre-recording and now we're going to dig into it live together. One of the things that she mentioned early on is Facebook, right? You are sharing Facebook's audience. And I was just letting this sink in as I was listening once again to my conversation with Jenn. I am sharing Facebook's audience when I am on their platform. I am building their audience. Do you really want to be a co-collaborator with Facebook when you could focus your time and energy on being a co-collaborator with another small business that you could help lift up? I just want to leave that there. This is an opportunity for you to share audiences. And the other thing that I wrote down, like I'm taking notes while I was listening to Jenn speak again. If it's valuable enough for one audience, it's valuable enough for both. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about your speaking topics and what you want to bring to the stage. You need to expand the people who are hearing this, right? And you need to find that good fit audience and be sure that the offers don't clash with who you're collaborating with, right? We talked about that. Jenn and I did. And I want you to know that those two pieces are built in parts of the Spotlight Machine methodology. And so if you don't know what a Spotlight event is, let's dig into that. It's a methodology that lets you find that good audience fit, finds the good collaborative fits. It allows you to get that flywheel started where you can repeatedly appear in front of people for increased visibility. Which leads me to the podcast tour. You heard Jenn mention that a few times, and that is actually what you can get as a bonus today. So if you want to get your own Spotlight Machine being built, I'll tell you more about how to do that in a minute. But if you do and you buy into that, then you get this bonus from Jenn. She will take you through a mini tour, a podcast tour, and you will get that extra boost of visibility right on top of building your Spotlight Machine. And so it will start that flywheel for you like nothing else. These two fit together so beautifully. So I'm excited to see who gets both and is going to be able to dive into really expanding their visibility. That another thing that I wanted to bring up is that proactivity. The podcast tour requires you, if you're doing this DIY, if you want to do a DIY podcast tour, that requires that you go out and find the podcasts and apply to them and all of that. And that's what Jenn's going to be able to help you with. But if you want to DIY it, that's a lot of hard work to get on stages, digital stages, virtual stages that aren't conversion events. So a podcast is a great thing for visibility, but it's not a great thing for conversions. So you can get your name out there, your voice out there, your message out there. But if you have something to sell from the stage, you can on podcasts. In fact, I've got a podcast episode coming up with Natalie Bulin, so you can watch for that one that talks specifically about selling from the stage. And you can do that on a podcast. In fact, she does, and I do. And so you can listen to that episode with that in mind. But it's not an ideal conversion environment. I'm going to mute real quick so I can cough. Getting me going too much here. That's why people who have podcasts also often host a summit once a year, like Jen was talking about. They work together because they are different kinds of stages that have different kinds of outcomes. Podcasts are more for visibility, summits are more for conversion and lead generation in a different kind of category. In order to speak, and this is from a hosting perspective. When it comes to a guesting perspective, it's closer to it's closer to the conversion event, but often you aren't allowed to pitch. So it's not a paid conversion, it's a qualified lead conversion, and then you can sell to them. So you get a little bit closer to conversions when you speak on summits versus podcasts, but still, even to get on summits, you have to get visible first so that you can be found. Because, like Jen said, a lot of summit hosts are looking to work with people they already are familiar with. And then two, let me make sure. Okay, we good. And then two, it's also not the biggest conversion event unless you are the host actually hosting the summit, like Jen talked about when she was working with Krista and they did a conversion event together to get conversions for Krista's Summit in a Box offer. That's a conversion event. It was her biggest to date conversion event that happened. And it was that for the host, but the speakers, who knows? Mixed bag, and certainly not on the level that Krista got, right? The thing with spotlight events is that you don't have to keep waiting for permission. You don't have to get that invitation to go on a summit. You don't have to wait for the application form to be read and for someone to get back to you, maybe eventually, because sometimes that happens too, where people don't even get back to you after you apply. You don't have to wait for permission to get up on the stage and sell. A spotlight event lets you have that visibility ecosystem. It's a really good foundation because you get the best of both worlds from the podcast side and the summit side, which means that then if you want to further expand into podcasting and summits, you already have this firm foundation in place. And if you already have a podcast, a spotlight machine can be a way to up-level that. If you already do summits, a spotlight machine can be that way to have consistent visibility, even when your one conversion summit event isn't happening. And I'm speaking from the hosting perspective right now. When it comes to guesting, once again, it's all about that permission thing today. That's what I'm really focused on, is no more waiting for permission. You can get on a stage every single week if you want to, if you create that stage. But how do you get in front of new audiences? That's that collaboration, right? So Spotlight Machine not only puts you on the stage, it's not just going live on social media, on YouTube, on Facebook. It's not just going live once a week. It's not just hosting webinars in a consistently periodically, like weekly or biweekly or something like that. This is a lead generative event as well, just like a summit is with bringing in new leads. And it's a conversion event, just like a summit, because you can take those new leads immediately into your offer if it's a good fit. And so it's this whole, you get to condense that buyer's journey because you are building a relationship from the stage. It's all the same things that make every stage valuable apply to the Spotlight Machine, and yet even more because you don't have to wait for permission. Okay. Looking at my notes again, with a podcast, sometimes you can pitch, sometimes you can't. It isn't a conversion setting, right? Even if you're allowed to pitch your offer, your paid offer, and invite people into it, oftentimes people are listening to podcasts when they're on the go. They're doing dishes, so they can't just grab their phone and check out your link. They're in the car. So this isn't a conversion setting. The Spotlight Machine and summits offer that opportunity to be in a conversion setting when people are tuning in live and they're with other people in a group. And that can make conversions just so much more powerful, not because of FOMO or like peer pressure, but because when someone already knows they want to do something, all they need is to be in a group who is already headed that direction to keep up that momentum and help themselves keep moving forward in the direction that they want. So that is really the power of getting people together in a live setting for a conversion event. But as you see here, that doesn't mean that you have to go live 100%. Today, I've shown a model that works with the Spotlight methodology, where I went live for briefly at the beginning to set expectations. Then we watched a recording together and we're chatting in the chat. And now I am live and recapping. And this is just one methodology. I could have called in sick today. I decided to come on live to really flesh this out and be able to connect with you. But I have also done it. You can also do it where you create a fully edited, or not, or just stream it live, unedited. Either way, you can create this pre-recorded video and stream it and be live in the chat and just be upfront about that. Don't try to fake it and make it seem like, I didn't make it seem like me and Jen were just live here, whatever. We pre-recorded for a couple of different reasons to ensure that you would have content today. You are, and I am here live with you, but this is just an example of a couple of models. The nitty-gritty doesn't matter so much if you have that strong foundation where you know that you are going to be set up for a powerful conversion type event in a collaborative setting where you and your collaborator are both bringing value to a shared audience, growing your audiences together. It's all so beautiful. It's the whole ice cream sundae, right? Like Jen was talking about. So right now, if you know that you want to stop waiting for permission and start selling more from the stage, like on a weekly basis or a couple times a month, or even just once a month, more consistently than you are now, if you want to stop asking for permission, waiting for permission to sell from the stage, then the Spotlight Machine is for you. And I have 3 different versions of this same transformation to get you started with creating this Spotlight Machine. And really the difference is in how much you want to be involved and how much you want done for you. It's as simple as that. If you have a really good event mentality and you just want to dip your toes into seeing what the Spotlight Machine might have to offer in addition, that initial offer, the planner, is for you. It's also for you if you already are comfortable doing events and you want to double down and do more and really maximize it, because the planner is going to give you a place to go through step by step and record your process of creating a strategically positioned conversion collaborative event and take all of your notes so that it's repeatable. So you may be hosting events, you may be going live, you may be doing all of this stuff, but this is going to organize it for you. Hence the planner being the title. So the planner is that first one. And then on the other side, the other extreme, is the white glove experience. So when I think of white glove, I think of the butlers who are right there tending to someone hand and foot and making sure that they are taken care of. I don't like to call it done for you because I like your involvement. I want to make sure that this Spotlight Machine is actually going to accomplish your goals and not just throw a method at you that hopefully works. No, we want to create a custom strategy. And so that's that white glove experience where I'm going to do it right with you, do a lot of your tech setup for and with you and your team. And that's that white glove experience, okay? The middle tier here is the best of both worlds. So you get to be involved in going through the planner and setting your goals and brainstorming ideas to accomplish those, brainstorming your collaborators, and you're going to get access to me in an asynchronous manner. What does that word mean? Asynchronous simply means out of sync. So in a good way. That means that you, even if it's midnight, 2 a.m. my time, you can submit your question. And then the next time that I'm going through questions, I will then take that question and answer it. And so we'll be able to interact on our own time. All right. So it's more of a group sort of thing where you can hear from other people and collaborate with others who are building Spotlight machines themselves. But it's also that access to me and my strategy and customizing that strategy. And if you don't know what I mean by customizing the strategy, watch the past episodes or reach out to me so that you can get to the past episodes. Because in the second episode that I did of these Spotlight Saturdays, I dug in, looked at multiple business goals that were not limited to just revenue and ticket sales and those sorts of things. We talked about how to get on certain stages, like your dream stage, and how a Spotlight machine can help you do that, etc. And so that's the kind of thing where you'll be able to bring that to me in that setting. If you choose this middle tier, you'll be able to say, here's my goal. How should I structure my Spotlight machine to accomplish that goal? And I'll help you brainstorm and then determine what within that brainstorm is actually going to fit with you moving forward. So 3 options so that there's sure to be one that suits you if you are ready to stop waiting for permission to get on other people's stages, build your own, make it an other people's stage. If you know that phrase from Pete Vargas, he likes to use that, OPSs. You can make it an OPS by inviting somebody to co-host with you, then it's their stage, and you get all of the benefits of being on an OPS as well. So without further ado, go to civilizedanimal.com/spotlight-special. And you have a limited amount of time to get this and get Jenn's podcast tour, because we have to limit those because Jenn is involved in making that happen. This isn't just a downloadable that tells you where you should apply. No, Jenn helps you find. Now I'm going to sneeze. Jenn is very involved in this. So be sure that you grab it before that countdown timer runs out on that page. I thought I could get it. We'll see you next time.